Hi, you're watching theAnalysis-news, and I'm your host, Talia Baroncelli. Today I'll be joined by sociologist Sari Hanafi. We'll be discussing Israel's tactics used against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and West Bank, as well as the defunding of UNRWA and the conditions in which Palestinian refugees live in the refugee camps in Lebanon. If you'd like to support the work that we do, you can go to our website, theanalysis.news, hit the donate button at the top right corner of the screen, and make sure you're on our mailing list. That way you're always up to date every time a new episode drops. Feel free to like and subscribe to the show on YouTube or on other podcast streaming services such as Apple and Spotify. See you in a bit with Sari Hanafi. Joining me now is Dr. Sari Hanafi. He is a professor of sociology at the American University in Beirut, and he was previously the editor of Idafat, the Arab Journal of Sociology. He was also formerly the president of the International Sociological Association. He has written numerous articles on the situation of Palestinians in the refugee camps in Lebanon, as well as analyzing the various tactics used by Israel in its occupation and spatiocide of Palestinians in the West Bank and in Gaza. And he's also written on the role of religion and religiosity in Arab societies. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello, Talia. Yeah, it was a pleasure to be with you.
It's great to have you. So earlier this month, we saw the Israeli military target and kill 7 World Central Kitchen aid workers. 6 of them were foreign nationals and 1 of them was Palestinian. And it's not as if these aid workers were working without permission. This was in a deconfliction zone, so they already had permission and were collaborating with the Israeli forces on the ground to distribute this aid. And the reason they were actually operating on the ground is because the Israeli military has made it near impossible for trucks to get into the Gaza Strip via traditional crossings. So many times if the Israeli forces find something which they deem to be a threat, such as a pair of scissors or nail clippers or whatever it might be, they could send the entire truck back, which is full of aid. And there's a bit of a backlog. Not that many trucks have gotten through. And then once they actually do get into the Gaza Strip, distribution of the aid is a huge issue as the infrastructure has been completely destroyed. Many of the civilian officers who were initially responsible for distributing the aid have been killed. But in response to the killings of the World Central Kitchen aid workers, there is a potential policy shift or, I guess, change in rhetoric towards the Israelis. And yet we do see a differentiated response when it comes to the systematic killing and murder of Palestinian civilians. The death toll is now over 33,000 Palestinians, of which at least 13,000 are children. So what do you make of this differentiated response, or how would you account for this response towards Palestinian civilians versus foreign aid workers? Would you chalk it up to an internalized dehumanization of Palestinians?
Well, I am someone who in the past criticized post-colonial studies, arguing that the colonial legacy is less and less influencing Western media, Western scholarship. And I saw how, for instance, Arab scholars have used and abused this colonial legacy. However, I cannot help to see, exactly as you said, the dehumanization of the Palestinians. I mean, just 2 days before this carnage against International Kitchen Organization, it was killing of 4 civilians, Israeli Palestinian civilians in Gaza. And I think Adot Ahronot and Harris, the 2 Israeli newspaper, recognized that it was unjustified. And nevertheless, there is no reaction of international community or media about that. So I think the word dehumanization is absolutely just. I think this kind of uh, condescending the human being outside of the metropolitans, capitals, and Western Euro American capitals is more and more. It's very clear in specifically analyzing mainstream media. Having said that, I would say we are also surprised how much you have solidarity in these societies. I mean, the mass demonstration there show that more and more you have, if you like, a gap generational gap between the old elite, which are really still despising those who are outside Euro-American hemisphere, and the new generation that they are more sensitive about many blight, I would say, in the global south. I would say in Africa about the development produced by the neoliberalism, but also about the Israeli settler colonial and apartheid practices, particularly in the last, if you like, 30 years. And it's funny when I say particularly in the last 30 years, it means Oslo process. Oslo process is 1993, so it's exactly 30 years ago, where the acceleration of the settler colonial project in West Bank and Gaza, clearly, especially in West Bank, where now the number of settlers increased 8 times, from 110,000 to 800,000.
I just wanted to bring up the Haaretz report you speak about, because you're right, Haaretz was writing on there were 4 Palestinians who were just walking and they were targeted and shot by a drone, and all 4 of them were killed. And I think what came out of this Haaretz report was that Israel the IDF tends to demarcate certain areas as quote unquote kill zones, and anyone who happens to be in these areas are then designated as a threat, and they can be killed with impunity, essentially. But you bring a really good point up, and that's, the younger generations showing solidarity with Palestinians. What do you think actually drives that?
I think simply a sense of justice. I mean, I think people do believe in on universality of human rights, and of course, this universality can be, if you like, undermined by interest sometimes, but nevertheless, for young people, I mean, they don't have product to sell. I would say outside their countries. I mean, they feel this injustice is going on the global south in general, but about the Gaza case. I mean, Gaza case it's really. I mean, I don't talk as a Palestinian here, but it's a flagrant case. It's the first time in the history of humanity we have a graphic genocide in the making. If you don't consider it genocide, even massacres in the making. We see every evening in our TV the mass killing of Palestinians. I mean, as you mentioned in the figure you mentioned, just yesterday they discovered a mass grave next to the hospitals of 60 Palestinian body there. So at Shifa hospitals. So this is, if you like, this is what is outrageous. It's German establishment and political parties, they say Holocaust is inherent part of our identity, and defending Israel at any cost. I mean, this is the old elite, those who govern these political parties. The German generations, they said no. I mean, what the meaning of that? It's a very tribal. It's exactly, in Arabic, there is Arab say you should be with your brother no matter what he commit as acts. I mean, it's a very tribal. I mean, what the meaning? Just last week, German representative in ICG,
at the International Court of Justice, they were
ICG, International Court of Justice, who said we are, is part of our identity to defend Israel. But for the international community, Israel is for UN. Israel is occupied forces. They occupied. They exercise illegally occupation over around 5 million Palestinians. So what the meaning? We are committed to defend Israel. So it means you are committed to defend the occupation.
And they're placing, in a way, they're placing the defense of Israel, and they're prioritizing it over their commitments to international law.
Absolutely. Today, this morning, I read an amazing article written by a friend, an Israeli friend, Eyal Weizman, who is located in Goldsmith College in London. Eyal wrote, his article is about the three genocide. He connected the Holocaust with the German genocide in Namibia, and if you like, and the current Israeli genocide, showing that the German really they committed the Holocaust. Once you dehumanize a word, you mentioned it, the other, and in Namibia they did the same thing, and now they are. It's the same logic. It's the same cultural logic. So I found it really very interesting. I mean, and in this article, how the three genocide has been connected.
And it's also, sorry, if I could just give some context to the Namibian genocide. So at the time, Namibia was, or what is currently known as Namibia, was part of the German Southwest colony, which at some point was governed by the father of Hermann Göring. So the Nazi officer Hermann Göring, his father was actually one of the governors of this German Southwest colony. And between the years of 1904 and 1908, over 66,000 Herero and Nama people were killed, were massacred, and this was a concerted effort to kill all of them, essentially, because there was what's called a Vernichtungsbefehl, so I guess a declaration to annihilate the Herero and Nama people, which was put forth by Lothar von Trotta, who was one of the generals. So I think you probably remember one of the German journalists in a UN session asking Francesca Albanese if she had found any documents written by the Israelis that they wanted to make a genocide or wanted to commit genocide. And I mean, what did this guy expect? To have another Vernichtungsbefehl, another document to order or to enact the annihilation of the people? It's kind of ridiculous.
And exactly in the same line, just 2 years ago, Gambia also sued Myanmar about committing atrocities, and I think genocide against the Rohingya people. what is very interesting that both France and Germany, they wanted to modify our definition of genocide to add the word implicit intention and not explicit, if you like. This is because explicit, I challenge you to find even one document worldwide that there is explicit document about committing genocide, including Holocaust, by the way. You know, the document about the final solution, we call it final solution. But if you read the document, the minutes of this meeting, the famous meeting with Hitler, I mean, yeah, you don't have even, you conclude that there is a decision of eliminating all the Jews. But in fact, the fact is stronger than anything else. This is why we consider Holocaust absolutely is a deliberate, intentional elimination of Jews. And the same, so it's a funny that they wanted to they pushed to change the Genocide Convention and international law concerning genocide, and now they claim to say we don't have evidence. It's not sufficient that the president of Israel, Herzog, said that there is no one single innocent in Gaza. It means that everyone is complicit of what happened in 7 October.
Yeah, I think you said there are no uninvolved civilians, something like that.
Yeah,
Everyone, according to him, would be involved or complicit in the Hamas attacks on Israel on October 7th, is his insinuation.
Exactly. So this is so if you like, this is what is new. What is new? It's a kind of I talk with a lot of French colleagues. Myself, I'm French also. So and sometimes I have a doubt whether I am exaggerating. Why it's unbelievable what we live in an insane time. I mean, and then I have really lay French people that they are not connected at all to Palestine, Israel, and to Middle East. They are as outraged as me, to feel like unbelievable. I mean, how you keep lying on yourself? How what interest? I mean, how Macron or other they think about some lobby, armed lobby, pro-Israeli lobby, that they will help them to be re-elected. I mean, this is really it's more and more. It's very selfish. Politician politician or if you like politicking, what we call sometimes politics, and this was horrible. This is why the young people in the street they are outraged about that. Now the problem, and I'm talking here as a sociologist of social movement, that as far as these young people on the street, they are not connected to classical political parties. It's very difficult to envisage really a kind of a leverage of political change. You need to do this. I personally observe the Green Party, the German Green Party, for a long time, and I know how many of this ecological thought have been driven by young generation from below. Unfortunately, I don't find this leverage today. Even I know that some of my green activists in Germany, they used to be active in this political parties. They left the political parties. So you see, this is where you you have a reason sometimes to leave these classical political parties, and then you don't have political leverage. So this is the dilemma that we live today on it.
Would you say that your colleagues and friends who left the Green Party or left traditional political parties left because they thought they could perhaps enact change more from the outside, from being an activist in other non-state organizations or not being affiliated with the state in any way?
Well, in Europe, if you like, in a liberal democracy, with all its flaws, left and right, and the role of lobbies more and more is important. This and neoliberal capitalism. I mean, how the market is manipulating politics, social life, emotional capitalism. I mean, taking into account all this, I would say still you can be in a political party and play the dissident at certain extent. I mean, we saw, for instance, for a long time in Socialist Party in France, how it was a gathering of a different groups where they don't have a main, if you like, they have so much divergence about some of the files. I mean, economic files sometimes, political files, and so on. So I think they are mistaken, those who leave the political parties, and they think that doing it only in the street level is sufficient. If you like, I am talking also as an Arab scholar, where I see the if you like, the mitigated, I don't want to use a stronger word like failure of Arab Spring, mitigated effect of what happened in the last decade, where this Leninist leaderless movement have not succeed political change, political democratic transition in this meaning, I mean. So you need to play the two levels. I mean, the street levels and the informal mobilization. But at a certain point, it's very important to also to frame this into a political structure, where this political structure can help, can really have a decision-making leverage.
You've just been watching part 1 of my discussion with Sari Hanafi. Join us for part 2, where we'll address the defunding of UNRWA and the role that UNRWA has played over the decades. We'll also be speaking about Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon and how the conditions there have changed over the years. Thanks for watching.